The moment blank, these two god-tier online gamers arrived in Disboard, a world where games decide everything, they used the knowledge from their old world to become the kings of Imanity, a race cornered by the other races. Now kings, after winning over several races and gathering the key figures, they formally challenged this world's god. What the god prepared for Blank and the other worlders was a 3,500-kilometer-long Sugoroku game. The strange thing is, even though this was them playing a game against the god, the game's content had them slaughtering each other. Even though Blank concluded it won't come to that between players, the truth was that Blank was being forced to face a game where losing means you must take your own life. The novel coming up has a massive amount of content, so I hope everyone can settle in and watch it all. This episode, let's start with why Jibril launched such a dangerous game against her masters, Blank. Rule 1. Each participant will have power dice, apportioned in proportion to their own mass and duration of existence. As explained last episode, mass and duration of existence refers to the body for living beings. But for a being with no boundary between soul and body, mass and duration of existence equals the soul's duration of existence. In other words, for every die Jibril loses, her soul is whittled down along with it. After Jibril passed the first square, she forgot everyone, masters included. She didn't understand why she was here, nor what she was supposed to do next. Trapped in the square and unable to teleport elsewhere, she could only choose to advance honestly. Before being swallowed by the magma, make a container holding 4 liters of water. Jibril completed this task in an instant, and because she did, she gained a die, which brought her lost memories flooding back. This is... Jibril quickly grasped what was happening to her. I see. So this is fear? And so, while she was still fighting, she barely managed to desperately record everything important in her diary. Regrettably, afterward, the things she'd recorded became utterly meaningless. For me, a Flügel, to call lowly humans master, there must be something wrong. They probably ensnared me with a game and implanted memories favorable to them. As for those arrogant monkeys, I'll go take a look. If I get the chance, I'll kill them. As luck would have it, after Jibril arrived at the bathhouse, Sora happened to hand her 8 dice, restoring all of her memories. Oh, no. After hearing her master's views on reincarnation, this was Jibril's only impression. Intense fear made Jibril decide not to return the dice. If she could, she even wanted to die on the spot. But the reason she couldn't do that was, she knew that if she died, it might wreck her master's plan. Not wanting to lose dice, yet unable to die, Jibril could only seize everything and complete her master's plan herself. After the task began, Sora and Steph were in a cramped cave with a table at the center of the space. On the table was an almost entirely black map, marked only with time, a few triangles representing units, and one shape representing a city. Beside the table were lots of paper and pens, and a bit farther away was a rickety wooden letterbox. Simply put, the game was write commands on paper and drop them in the letterbox, and you can control the units on the map. Of course, the game wasn't that simple. Inside the space, Blank and the other worlders could clearly feel the shocks coming from outside. In other words, this space was actually part of the Imanity capital. Furthermore, 1 second inside the space equals 8 hours on the map, So if you write too slowly, it's hard to handle the accidents that crop up in the game. Impressively, even in this chaotic situation, Sora quickly grasped what to do in this game. He checked one of the triangle IDs, immediately dropped a note to send that unit out to scout. But the unit had barely stepped out of the capital when it was swept off the map by a gust of wind. What was that just now? Sora opened the info panel on the map. It read, Scale C Wind? This place, which even a tornado floor can't compare to. What is going on here? Only now did Sora admit that Jibril was complete. To check the outside situation, Sora opened one of the scout units and pulled up its feed, and that unit's view was projected out of thin air inside the cave. This is the Great War? What Blank saw wasn't the warfare they knew. It was hell. To put it as an analogy, the civilization Blank could control was an ancient one, while the other races controlled super high-performance units that even the future can't catch up to. And these races were already in a war-declared state. The moment you're spotted, you die. Yet the victory condition was still capture the opponent's capital. Worse, even if they truly won, all they'd get was the result of Jibril's death. This was a game hard to win to begin with, and one where winning only brings bad outcomes. Even if you lose all your dice, you don't die, right? So we just have to get Jibril to the finish. Steph's argument was sound, but based on Sora's understanding of the Old Deus' game, doing that would still leave one person dead. To keep that person from dying, Blank can't let Jibril win. To keep Jibril from dying, they also can't beat her. If you feel you can't win, feel free to forfeit. Who is afraid of who? Shiro, let's go all out! And so, Blank took on this doomed-to-lose game. Shiro, write on the command sheet, have an affair with the wife next door. Wouldn't that be fun? As Sora said this stupid thing, their former capital was wiped out by a flash of light. Bro, nice work! But we have to give the right instructions. Currently, Sora is 1.8, Shiro 1.1, and Steph only 3.6. If this space weren't isolated from the outside, they'd have died long ago. In other words, the isolation meant that even if artillery hit the capital directly, Blank wouldn't die instantly. Also, having the capital blown away doesn't count as a loss for either side, because the losing condition is being subjugated, meaning another race has to enter for it to count as a loss. Of course, if the capital vanishes entirely and Imanity goes extinct, Blank would still be cornered with no way out. Hearing this, you might think Blank's situation is the same as Riku and Shui's, just don't get discovered. But this method became impossible the moment Jibril knew Blank existed. Since, in theory, they could do nothing right now, Blank could only run various experiments. Bro, the affair looks like it worked. Sora had 2 commands for Steph to drop in the letterbox. First, designate the wife next door. For 20 days from today, at 2200 each day, feel intense hunger, move to the coordinates granary, and secretly steal food. Second, designate the affair lover. On day 15 at 2101, meet the wife next door at the granary, and in exchange for overlooking the theft, demand a physical relationship. The experiment's result was a great success. The wife next door decided on her own to comply with the affair lover's coercion and have a physical relationship with him. And not only that, they also decided on their own to do it more than twice. To put it plainly, these units make their own judgments. Good. Next step. Sora's third command was command the wife next door. Tell your husband you're being extorted and must pay someone hush money for stealing food. then hand that hush money to the affair lover. The affair lover who took the money then fled far away to the third city. The experiment succeeded again. The wife next door swindled her entire fortune out of her husband, and then it was the affair lover's turn to flee. All right, we finally found our breakthrough. This jerk completely ignores the misfortune he brought on himself. Over the next 16 hours, Blank frantically wrote commands, and Steph frantically dropped them. The commands Blank gave were roughly: teach how to make telescopes, tell the scouts the safe routes for pathfinding, develop an agriculture usable even in this wild world, develop food preservation tech, and so on. Since this world had ultra-high temperature and pressure shocks happening everywhere, the material for telescopes, glass, appeared in abundance, so Blank didn't have to make the game's humans start from grinding glass. Basically, their progress went smoothly. During this period, the number of scouts reached 4 digits, and even the outline of the continent was displayed on the map. Bro, found it! As their field of view opened up, they finally discovered a target they could barely negotiate with during the Great War: the werebeasts. From Shiro's calculations, they derived these werebeasts' hunting routes, and from they go out to hunt every day, they could tell these werebeasts were already in a state of hunger. All right, Shiro, it's fun diplomacy time. Sora deliberately placed on their hunting route smoked Imanity meat, roasted sweet potatoes, and a diplomatic invitation. Capture 1 elf, get food. Capture it alive, get double. Blank's idea was use the werebeasts to win over 1 elf, then use that elf to sell out its own kind. That way the pieces they could use would keep increasing. Regrettably, 1 elf unit wiped out an entire werebeast group clean, and even withdrew from the werebeast group's base unscathed. Sora, didn't you say you wanted to capture someone? I did. And we did actually capture one, right? Yes, which is why the elf left the werebeast base. Bro, how did you originally plan to obtain an elf unit? Obviously by crushing his spirit and dignity, pumping all kinds of pleasures into him so he'd hang on our every word from then on. So all I ever wanted was to catch a female. So Sora wanted the elf to fall, huh? A fairy will submit once she's caught by an orc group, right? Let me just remind you, orcs aren't werebeasts. Damn, so orcs are the dwarfkin? No wonder it failed. Anyway, Sora had no intention of abandoning his other wicked plans. The next second, as luck would have it, Shiro spotted orcs of the dwarfkin not far to the south along that elf's return route. Nice work, Shiro. Use the scouts to guide them and have them attack the elf as a group. Even though elves aren't called fairies, Sora felt them not being fairies was just stubborn denial. Fairies are fated to be turned by orcs into the lewd kind. After the command was executed, something strange happened. The orc units on screen actually began dwindling. At first, Blank and Steph both assumed the orcs were being cut down in retaliation, like the werebeasts. But these orcs were actually vanishing one by one within 2 seconds. In other words, this wasn't death from combat. It was the orcs being drained to utter exhaustion. Then something even more horrifying happened. The elves actually started large-scale war with the dwarfkin in order to manufacture 2 people. Because of Sora, the elves have, as you wished, turned into the lewd kind. What do we do about this obscene rewriting of history? If Miss Feel saw it, she'd kill you. Steph was so angry she couldn't get a word out. Huh? It was me who tried to turn one fairy into the lewd kind. I admit that. But if, because of that, the whole race turns into the lewd kind, then that just means they were that kind of race to begin with. I always thought Fiel's noble face was suspicious. No mistake. Once you peel off her disguise, she's surely filthy too. I can practically see her getting up to some serious Yuri with Karami. Don't forget, everyone, elves have males too. Because the dwarfkin were about to be wiped out, it forced them to create a demon king to come reinforce. The demon king was a mutant of the phantasma, immensely powerful, and in one blow it caused the elves unprecedented massive casualties. To counter the demon king, the elves deployed their trump card, Void Old Deus Blessing, and once this ultimate move was unleashed, the demon king was destroyed. Just when it seemed the fighting had come to a lull, the phantasma and dwarfkin, who feared Void Old Deus Blessing, began allying with the dwarfkin side, which in turn pushed the elves back into disadvantage. Watching the dwarf coalition grow, the Dragonia and fairies, who saw the dwarfkin as their hypothetical enemy, also formed a united front with the elves. And so the flames of war kept spreading, and the sacrifices kept mounting. Just when it seemed this situation would go on endlessly, suddenly, light rained down from above both armies, wiping out both armies' main forces outright. From the Demon King's deployment to both armies' main forces being completely annihilated took less than a single hour. Shiro, I think we'll just pin all the blame on the G player. Pointless. Well then, viewing complete. Time to get back to the game. Here it comes! Here it comes! The war criminal's about to flee! Where's the law to bring justice? After seeing Jibril launch her attack, Blank became certain. In this game, they will win, but they can't win. So Blank decided to pick up the pace and control the coming shifts in the situation. 22 hours had passed since the task began. Jibril recalled what happened when the game started. After first understanding that her master wanted her to betray, Jibril suddenly thought, I can use tasks to recreate the Great War. Though at this point she hadn't yet planned the rule, being subjugated means you must die. Jibril had initially, in a delighted mood, wanted to understand how an overwhelming weakling can topple an overwhelming strong one head on. And thinking of this, she even boasted a bit. But once she discovered she might be recreated, she completely lost the mood to enjoy it, and could only choose to trash this game. Interestingly, even so, Blank accepted her as she was. Even though after the task began, just one self-destruct command in the letters sent to Jibril would let Blank win, those letters held nothing but taunts. Seeing her master like this, Jibril could only respond with everything she had. So, as a Flügel, what should she do next? Simple. What she thought of was use Flügel firepower to exterminate all races. Since the masters are Imanity, then for them to win, they can only act entirely from the shadows and manipulate the war from behind. And to manipulate the war, you need to use the other races as pieces. So if you destroy all the pieces, then the masters, unwilling as they may be, can only choose to surrender. So, seeing the assembled elf army and dwarf coalition, Jibril seized the moment to wipe out their main forces in one stroke. Up to this point, she was like the strong of old, one-sidedly trampling the enemy. The situation's changed a bit. Unlike Blank's map, the map on her side was fully open and fully lit. So Jibril quickly noticed the races that had each gone their own way began joining hands, and clearly took the Flügel as their enemy. Is this really okay, Jibril? A game too dull, plus dreadful attached conditions, left Jibril writing commands while shedding tears. After that stretch of time, Blank actually built a magnificent city in an inconspicuous spot on this planet. And inside the city, agriculture was already underway. Of course, agriculture didn't bear fruit in an instant. It took a century of trials inside the game, plus the aid of the tablet outside it, to complete this brand new farming technology. This tech was crucial. Besides pushing Imanity units past 450,000, it also used this tech to win over the near-extinct werebeasts. The werebeasts work hard to feed themselves, and rebuy their grain at rock-bottom prices. Yes, Blank used the werebeasts as cheap labor, though this was naked exploitation. Since they had no tribe and no food, they didn't even have the right to choose whether or not. Also, even if the werebeasts wanted to seize the key technology, since even Imanity themselves didn't know what the tech was, they had no way to get at it. Bro, Shiro wants to sleep 5 minutes, can she? 51 hours since the game began, Blank hadn't eaten or slept, while Steph had at least managed 4 hours. So Sora granted Shiro sleep and began pondering, why did the Great War end? In theory, the Great War could never have a day it ends, because if someone topples the strongest, then this time it's just that person's turn to be toppled. Games differ from reality. All games have clear end conditions, but reality doesn't. If it's really as Jibril said, that Imanity or the Ex Machina killed the god of war, then next it'd just be their turn to be killed. But in fact, the Great War did end. The one true God, too. Reasoning this far, Sora finally noticed 2 key points. Why didn't the Ex Machina, who slew the god of war, go extinct? Why weren't there any vanished races in the past? Meaning, did the Great War end without a single race going extinct? At this point, Sora deduced further. In the brief span after the Flügel's master was slain, there must have been a dramatic critical condition that ended the Great War then and there. Of course, Sora doesn't know what that condition was. He could only guess it's connected to the one true god, Tet. Tet? Seriously? Was that something someone entrusted to you? The so-called that is something the present world has and the past world didn't, namely the 10 Covenants. Hey now, to think a human came within 1 step? Just who on earth was that person? Sora saw that the 10 Covenants were a scheme left behind to break the theorem that you can only keep sacrificing. And moreover, that some unknown person aimed for 0 sacrifice and made it all the way to the end. You two are way too cool. Riku and Shui were precisely the objects of Sora's yearning. But I can't live as coolly as you two. While Sora's emotions were still hard to settle, a huge change appeared on the map. The coalition of many races was saturation bombing the Flügel capital, and by the second, Flügel vanished from the map one after another. So this is the result. Jibril brought about her own destruction. Since Sora had long known Jibril wouldn't aim to capture the capital to make Blank lose, she could only choose to subjugate all races, and the result of doing so was making too many enemies and getting swarmed by everyone. So then, will Jibril die? Huh? Who'd let her have it her way? Shiro, we're us. Let's be the villains in our own style, okay, Shiro? This is Blank's first defeat. As long as it's fun, Shiro will follow Big Bro. Since we rarely get to lose, let's savor it. And so, Sora issued the final capital teleport. All right, that's all for Volume 8. Just kidding. Cutting off here would be too cruel. One beautifully, Master. Now, Jibril had only 2 units left, Avantheim and Artosh. At this point, even without any basis, she became certain that the ones who ended the Great War were Imanity. I'm a hopeless bodhisattva. Master, how did the world change? How did the world change? I'm sorry, that we can't answer. But we'll show you what kind of world it became afterward. Suddenly, Blank and Steph appeared behind Jibril, and they even brought the map and the letterbox. Heh, we're here. Shiro missed you. It turned out Blank had teleported the Imanity capital over here too, and the reason they did so was the moment the capital falls, the 4 of us die together. You threatened us with our lives, so this bit of revenge is only fair, right? Seeing her master say this, Jibril nervously tried to end the game by surrendering herself. But why did you add a rule like lose and you self-destruct? Yes, Blank had long since sensed Jibril's lies and troubles from the bathhouse conversation. So that's how it is. Neither of us can forfeit or win. Well then, let's begin. Having said this, Sora grabbed Jibril's map and command sheets and began issuing commands. Jibril, let me make this clear. In this game, Blank has lost. Because next, we're going to... Found it. Shiro, how much time is left? 16 hours, 22 minutes, 48 seconds. In-game, about 19,656 days, 53.852 years. The opponent is the demon that drove the Flügel at their peak into a corner, and we have to face such an opponent and evade for over half a century. Shiro, this is the hardest game yet, and one premised on defeat. A super brutal game. How about it? Wonderful. Jibril, if you watch and feel satisfied, please reward us 2 dice. Ready? And Blank began their performance. In the past, I once asked my brethren, why were we able to survive this great war? No one answered me then, and I answered my brethren, because we are the weak. But now, I feel deep shame over those words. I never imagined the truth was, you were simply too incompetent. You weren't the weak, you lacked discipline. You weren't the weak, you didn't learn. And so I thought, then decided to remake you this way. You livestock, fallen to such a pitiful degree. You've worked hard. Allow me to introduce myself. We are the Imanity, who have sworn to exterminate you. Now, livestock, dream on. In the palm of my hand, dream the dream that you can escape. The one who spoke this oath was, of course, Sora, only it was voiced through Avantheim's mouth. Not only that, as this declaration was made, 2 beams of light in succession stole the world's gaze. The first was the light of the god of war Artosh's Suniaster being destroyed. The second was the light of Avantheim's final strike. Strangely, as the 2 lights ended, the coalition that had been facing off against Avantheim was, in just 2 hours, completely annihilated. Master, what on earth did you do? The answer is, they did nothing. After Blank commanded Avantime to salute Artosh, the other races arbitrarily assumed someone beat us to killing our common enemy. This coalition already had internal rifts, and now, with their greatest threat inexplicably gone, they naturally figured the other side had done it. So, to avoid being wiped out along with the rest, they had to strike first, bring out their previously hidden power, and go all out to destroy their former allies. Come! Whether it's the last one standing or a single winner, go have yourselves a good fight. Then, why did you announce your name? There won't be anyone left alive. It turned out that these races' movements were all within Blank's predictions. Before teleporting over here, Blank had already secured the Domphir's cooperation. Elves, dwarfkin, whichever race's blood they wanted. Take your pick. Blank sold intel on these two races to the Domphrs, having the Domphrs act as spies to gather more intel for Blank. Not only that, Blank also deliberately taught the elves and dwarfkin tactical theory and combat methods. Amateurs swinging their freshly learned magic staffs with a half-baked stance. Everything was in the palm of Blank's hand. In other words, giving them these moves only made it easier for Blank to predict where they'd go. Sure enough, the elves and dwarfkin both got mired in a quagmire war. And to solve their food shortages, both marched on the werebeasts, who held the largest granary. And the result was the fighting spreading ever wider. Of course, no matter how all-powerful Blank might be, predicting everything in the Great War was still impossible. Just with the giants and Lunamana, whose movements were unclear, they couldn't tell how they'd intervene. Now, one fatal misjudgment, and the capital would be discovered at once, with death that brooks no argument waiting ahead. The world is gradually being destroyed. Yeah, it'll be destroyed. Let this moldy world go on rotting. So saying, Sora smiled at Jibril. This world has already become a game. No one dies, no one is sacrificed. Whether it's Jibril, us, or anyone at all, the world is now one where even that kind of selfishness might come true. Inwardly, Sora believed that only by letting this old world perish could he thank that unknown person. Hey, what do we do about this? The Lunamana crashed the moon down onto the surface, and this blast not only killed the vast majority of life on the surface, it also blew away the death storm swirling around Aventheim. Remember what I said before? This thing can effectively drive off the other races. In other words, without it, the other races can approach their common capital. Master, that's enough. Please, order me to hand over my dice and then die. By now, a small number of units had begun tightening their encirclement of the capital. Jibril, not wanting her masters and Steph to die, desperately begged Blank to order her to die. You're so noisy. Shut up. You're distracting me. Truthfully, Sora was scared to death. So scared a few tears accidentally slipped out. He didn't want to die, didn't want Jibril to die, didn't want to lose his memories, didn't want Jibril to lose hers. He wanted Jibril to imitate her masters a little. In a situation like this, just bawl shamelessly. 71 hours, 45 minutes. 71 hours, 46 minutes. 71 hours, 47 minutes. As the game's end drew nearer and nearer, Sora, while ordering the Imanity units to become infants, loudly shouted this. How could we be so strong? Who wants to live so coolly? That cool, godlike player failed, didn't he? If I wanted to act cool, I'd win against Jibril right now, saying, I won't let your sacrifice be in vain, then shed a manly tear. Do I really have to lie to myself like that to be cool? People like that are way too cool. But let me ask one thing. What does acting cool like that leave behind? You cheerfully escaped through death, leaving these sad, weeping folks behind? What kind of result is that? I really don't get it. Just be yourself. It's all right or all wrong, and I won't apologize either. Let's just play joyfully to the very end. Anyway, as Sora bared his heart, time kept pushing forward, and the pieces he could use kept vanishing. That said, it's still my fault. It's just that those two are a little off in the head. Rather than sacrifice someone, make everyone a piece? Though it's a headache-inducing fallacy, this fallacy of let no one be sacrificed, I hope they carry it through to the very end, no matter what. 71 hours, 58 minutes. Now, without even looking at the map, you could see the enemy with the naked eye. All that was left were the units on hand, and those were nearly gone. Even though the lack of any effective means had brought his hand to a halt, Blank still desperately searched for a countermeasure. Are we going to fail again? In accelerated thought, Blank suddenly heard this voice, and before their eyes suddenly appeared two blurry figures, their faces indistinct. Yeah, maybe we'll fail, but I will never make the same mistake as you. No, don't meddle. The two who cried this out re-gripped the hands they'd unknowingly let go. And then, just like that, a unit Blank had never seen appeared on the map. Even though Blank couldn't tell from the map what this unit was, Shiro and Sora were oddly certain what this unit is and what it can do. And so Blank completed a command on a single sheet and handed that command to Steph. 71 hours, 59 minutes, 59 seconds. Now the enemy's voices were clearer. It was one Dragonia and a huge swarm of small fry. Sora was certain that the moment that dragon opened its mouth, all the enemies would swarm in. But the instant Steph handed the command out, let us show you what Laputa's lightning is. Light speed sweep. Less than a second after they said the line they wanted to say, light that pierced the planet came from above the capital. And this one blast reduced the capital and all nearby enemies to nothing. It turned out the command Blank had written was, tell the Ex Machina the capital's coordinates and ask the Ex Machina to try to end it. And so, on pure intuition, Blank successfully let everyone live. 72 hours. As the task ended, Blank smiled at the blurry outlines and said this: we made a promise. We'll never let go of each other's hands again, and we don't want to die with regrets again either. If what we couldn't do is what you two managed, then rest easy. From here, what you two couldn't do, we'll shoulder it all. Having said this, Blank seemed to see the shadows smile faintly. Pretty fun, Jibril classmate. You just barely passed. To think you proposed a game that could only be lost. From that moment, we were completely beaten. We enjoyed it thoroughly. But next time will be our complete victory. That you could make Blank taste defeat? Impressive. But be prepared. 100 times. 1,000 times. Don't think that 10,000 tries will let you beat us. The Blank who said this wore only the frustration of defeat. Thank you, Master. Jibril is unworthy. Overcome by all sorts of feelings, Jibril suddenly recalled her master's words. If you watch and feel satisfied, please reward us 2 dice. So, to keep her masters, the other worlders, and her friends from vanishing, Jibril, while saying, "Reward you? I truly don't deserve to," handed over the dice at her chest to her masters. After 72 hours, the task was deemed unfulfilled, and Jibril once again lost part of her memories, sitting alone on the grassland. By her feet was a book, its cover looking like this. "Say who wrote it. Quick, then kill them!" Thinking this, Jibril flipped to the back. "Don't worry. Wait. Jibril, sit down." Even though she didn't know what these words meant, Jibril couldn't control herself. Tears kept falling with a sense that something very fun had happened. Even though she had no idea what was going on, Jibril decided to follow the book's instructions because she felt something joyful would happen. All right, that's all for Volume 8, the strategy simulation game Jibril and Blank played. As usual, if there's anything you don't understand, feel free to leave a comment below or ask me during the Saturday livestream. This episode was really hard to make, so I hope everyone can subscribe and share generously. If you have the means, you can also join as a member so I can keep up the quality of the work.